Um, uh, yeah, so sorry, it said recording in progress, and yeah, we might as well get started. And if folks tune in a bit, they'll just have missed some introductions, and we'll be sharing this recording on the website after, just so everyone on the call is aware. And yeah, thanks again for attending. I'll start with my introduction. Phil, Town of Golden, I'm Director of Planning and Development. And I'll turn the call over to Urban Systems for sharing some of the significant work they've done on our DCC program to date.
Sarah Anderson with the Urban Systems, Senior Consultant.
And my name's Jen Waite. I am a DCC and ACC consultant with Urban Systems. My colleague Sarah Anderson and I have been supporting the town in their DCC update. And our other colleague here, Trinda, is here to help facilitate our engagement. I'll pass it over to you, Trinda.
Hi, everyone. My name is Trinda Cote. I'm with Urban Systems, and I'm a project coordinator. And I'll just be supporting on the facilitation side of things.
So just for some housekeeping, we'll jump to our some Zoom housekeeping, and Trinda can help guide us through how to interact with the interface.
Yeah, so just jumping in here. So at the bottom left hand of your screen, you'll notice there's an unmute button and your video button. So just ensuring that we do stay muted. So we're avoiding any background noise, and you can choose to keep your video on or off. You'll also notice there's also the chat section where you can put any questions that come up during the meeting, and we'll make sure that we do get to those at some point. And then this is just another view. So there are those two audio and video settings down at the bottom left. And then you can also view all the participants and the chat window at the bottom in the middle. And then there's also the option to rename yourself if you choose to.
Great, thanks, Trinda. Trinda will help monitor our chat and let us know of any questions that come up. Since there is about 25 participants in the chat, we'll probably go through questions at the end of our presentation here. So we'll jump right in to the agenda. So let's go over the agenda for the presentation. We'll discuss the driving causes for the town to pursue a DCC update at this time. We'll provide a quick DCC overview. So some introductory DCC information to ensure we can all participate in the conversation effectively. And as I'm saying DCC, obviously I mean development cost charges. Apologies for leveraging those acronyms at the start there. So we'll review the town's DCC projects and rates. We'll review the proposed rates in comparison with other regional communities. And then we'll talk about the overall project next steps. So why update now? The DCC bylaw was last updated in 2012, and since that time, the town has completed projects on the current list. There are changes in the town's funding needs, resulting in growth-related projects in both transportation and parks. There have been changes in development patterns in the town, including the amount of growth. There are various legislative changes that have occurred since that 2012 DCC update that require consideration in the DCCs, including small-scale multi-unit housing considerations, as well as updates to DCC categories and permissions and other funding permissions. So overall, the best practice is to update every 5 years to ensure that the DCCs are collecting and funding what is most appropriate based on updated information. And this is also to ensure that the costs included in a DCC program reflect the current economic conditions and cost of infrastructure. So now we'll do a brief DCC's overview to provide some introductory DCC concepts and ensure that we have shared understanding when we start reviewing the town's DCC update. So what are DCCs? DCCs are a one-time charge to pay for major transportation, water, sewer, drainage, parks, protective services, and solid waste capital projects, which are required to service growth. Important to keep in mind is that DCCs are intended to fund growth-related infrastructure, so projects that extend services or provide further capacity. They are not intended to fund like-for-like replacement projects. And for reference, protective services in this case refer to both police and fire infrastructure. We will review the specific types of infrastructure that can be funded through DCCs in the next couple slides. So DCCs are also regulated by the province through the Local Government Act, as well as the Provincial DCC Best Practices Guide. So why use DCCs? DCCs are a funding mechanism used to fund infrastructure required to service growth. This ensures that existing residents do not bear the primary costs for new development. DCCs and the establishment of them help provide certainty to developers. By having stated rates, development can better anticipate future costs for performers, rather than proceeding on a project-by-project basis of funding, whereby those costs aren't as predictable or hard to account for in those development performers. DCCs also help distribute the cost of growth through all development occurring throughout the municipality. Again, avoiding scenarios where a developer has to bear the brunt of the infrastructure cost, or the existing taxpayer is also bearing the largest share of the cost. The DCC charges also help ensure communities are able to save for growth-related infrastructure. By enabling proactivity, the municipality can better address growth needs and preventing delays in development due to any funding hurdles. So, what works can DCCs pay for? DCCs can be used for the hard costs that must be used to support growth. For example, roads and active transportation projects. So this includes things like sidewalks, bike paths, and transit improvements, and highway facilities that are also cost shared with MOTI, such as overpasses. Trunk sewers and water mains are another big component of infrastructure that can be funded there. Major storm sewers, the purchase of land for parks and the provision of parks, parkland improvements, fire halls, police stations, recycling facilities, and any land acquisition associated with any of those infrastructure upgrades. DCCs notably cannot be used for new or upgraded works needed for the existing population. So worth considering, this is considered asset replacement. That is like for like replacement. And this is not beneficial, it has no benefit to growth directly. Utility connections, for example, local service connections for water and sewer, operation and maintenance costs, and new community buildings like libraries, recreation centers. Those are now eligible to be collected for under ACCs. Eligible and ineligible projects are determined by the legislation, and notably, DCC projects must be growth related. This infrastructure is determined essential for development to occur, and growth cannot occur without it. DCCs are directly reflecting the costs to service new development in a very practical and tangible way, like turning on taps and flushing toilets. These things must be funded for growth to occur. So how do we determine the DCC rate? The generation of the DCC rate is informed by various inputs, both technical and council policy inputs. The technical inputs that support the calculation include the estimated growth that will occur through a designated time horizon. This is informed by the estimated population and the historic building population data trends. The capital costs of the required projects to service that growth are then determined, as well as the anticipated timing of those projects. Importantly to note here is that the growth and the projects must align with the program time horizon. In this scenario for the town's update, it is 25 years. The projects are then reviewed on an individual basis to determine the benefit factor. The benefit factor delineates the benefit that the project has for growth versus the existing resident. This is informed by technical information done through master planning or an anticipated rule of thumb, the difference between the existing population and the growth, so that shared benefit. Projects that are solely benefit growth are typically at 100% benefit allocation. The draft DCCs are also influenced by policy inputs through the municipal assist factor. The municipal assist factor is the amount of funding the local government contributes we'll discuss this further along in further detail along in the presentation. So all of these inputs help calculate the resulting DCC rates. At a very basic level, this is the DCC calculation. So the DCC recoverable costs are those costs that end up in the DCC program after we look at the infrastructure, the cost of infrastructure that is needed to service growth, and the difference between that and the benefit and the municipal assist factor here. So the recoverable costs are those costs that can be directly funded through the DCC rate. This is divided then by the anticipated growth over that time horizon. Note that growth here we've just generally bucketed, but it represents growth in each development category. So the various residential types and density, commercial, industrial, and institutional uses. The rates are distributed according to that impact of those uses on the infrastructure. This results in varied DCC rates for those different types of uses. So with that division of the DCC costs over the growth, you then result in those DCC rates. So DCCs are paid by applicants for subdivision approval or building permit, and DCCs are charged at time of subdivision or building permit. So typically the non-residential development types are charged at time of building permit when floor area is known, whereas a single family that is undergoing subdivision will be charged at time of subdivision. Higher density residential types tend to be charged at time of building permit, again, when the number of units is known. If a single family home is demolished and rebuilt, no single family DCC applies in this case. So we'll now outline the DCC projects and the resulting DCC rates. In general, the projects included were informed by technical master planning and conversations with staff based on the anticipated infrastructure needs over the next 25 years. So some background. In early 2025, a DCC scenario was examined with all projects for information only, with a total capital cost of $109.2 million. This can be reviewed in the May 5th, 2025 DCC Part 2 Council presentation that is available on the town's website. The rates in general are $88,000 per low density dwelling unit and $543 per commercial square meter of floor space. In May 2025, Council supported the following Scenario 2 rates for consultation. So these are the rates that we are bringing forward for consultation here. This resulted in a 1.4% annual property tax rate increase for the next 25 years and a 1.04 annual utility rate increase for the next 25 years to account for the municipal contribution to DCCs. Some further background. In the fall of 2025, Council approved front-ending the 12th Street lift station and upstream sewer pipes north of the station, crossing the railway tracks and recovering the costs by all developments contributing with new sewer connection fees established to be paid at time of building permit issuance or connection. The resulting updates to the proposed DCC program included removing a few pipe segments upstream of the 12th Street South lift and reallocating benefit factors for the 5th Avenue South sewer pipes. The proposed DCC program capital costs were reduced through this change from $31.5 million to now a $28.9 million. And the DCC recoverable in turn was reduced from $28.6 million to $25.6 million, just through those changes in inclusion. So now for the 2026 DCC capital program, the total DCC program summary is provided here. The DCC recoverable cost represents the portion of capital costs that are eligible to be funded through DCCs. The municipal responsibility represents the portion of capital costs that are to be funded by the municipality. This is through other means outside of the DCCs, such as taxes or utility fees. This cost represents both the municipal assist factor and the existing resident benefit allocation. So in total, the total capital cost of this program is $28.9 million. The proportion of that program that is DCC recoverable is $25.6 million, with the municipal responsibility being 3.5 million. Now for for further detail on the municipal assist factor. The Local Government Act provides municipalities the authority to impose DCCs and to assist with capital costs for growth-related infrastructure. So the municipal assist factor is essentially that portion of the cost of that capital project that the municipality chips in. The minimum standard municipal assist is 1%. The municipal assist factor can vary by program, limited to infrastructure type. So you can have a different assist factor for transportation versus sewer. The higher municipal assist factor means lower DCCs, but also a greater burden on existing residents. So the municipal assist factor is a policy decision that is entirely at the discretion of council. And in this case, council has supported a municipal assist factor of 1% for the purposes of consultation. Besides the DCC program, the town and the taxpayer has supported growth-related infrastructure in many ways, including financing master plans, development financing guides, a new water well, front-ending the 12th Street lift station and pipes, and proposed cost sharing on Pine Drive alternative sewer alignment. So, and things to consider as we're determining this level of fairness and equity when financing growth-related infrastructure. Now we'll jump into the list of projects themselves. And if questions come up with this, we can always circle back after the end of the presentation for more detailed questions. There are a total of 6 transportation projects. This is a new program through this DCC update. The total estimated capital cost of this program is 5.3 million. Now on to water projects. There are a total of 3 water projects included in this DCC update, and the resulting estimated capital is 4 million. For sanitary sewer projects, there are a total of 7 projects, and this results in an estimated total capital cost of 19.4 million. For the parks projects, there's only one project in the parks program with an estimated total capital cost of 230,000. The parks master plan funded through this will help inform the town's future park needs. So those capital costs and project lists have informed these DCC draft rates. So these rates are broken up by program into transportation, water, sanitary, sewer, and parks, with the total DCC on the farthest right column there. And something I want to highlight here on this page is that urban systems work with staff to determine the appropriate land uses that are informed by development trends in the town of Golden. So you can see that the rates are broken down by those land uses, with residential low density. This includes single, detached, and duplex residential types. Residential medium density, which includes townhouse, triplex, fourplex, and mobile home types. Residential high density, which includes apartment and detached suites, as well as commercial accommodation, commercial uses, industrial, and institutional. So commercial accommodation has been carried over from the previous DCC due to the anticipated growth in that type of use. Institutional is a new land use category that has been included in this DCC update. And then accordingly, they are charged on the anticipated development type. So on a per dwelling unit basis, typically for residential, commercial accommodation charged on a per room basis, and then commercial, industrial, and institutional on the square foot gross floor area. So this chart shows the current DCC rates, notably from 2012, versus the draft DCC rates we are presenting for engagement. This DCC update does represent an increase, but it is important to consider that in this update, there are 2 additional funding categories being incorporated, that being the transportation program as well as the parks program. It's also important to note that the 2012 or the current DCC rates represent 2012 costs, and this update reflects more current costs. The town has also undertaken further infrastructure planning, so further needs and investment has been highlighted and incorporated to help facilitate future growth in the town of Golden. And these draft rates also represent that 1% municipal assist factor. Now we'll discuss some in-stream protection. So important to note here, especially when we're looking at the proposed DCC rates versus the previous DCC rates, the new DCC rates will be effective at bylaw adoption unless a future effective date is set. However, legislation provides protection to in-stream applications. So this includes building permit applications, subdivision applications, as well as those precursor applications that would lead to subdivision or building permit applications, such as rezoning or development permits. So importantly, the applications need to be submitted need to be complete at submission to qualify for this in-stream protection. So this is a complete building permit, subdivision, or precursor application, so a complete rezoning application. These need to be submitted prior to the date of the DCC bylaw adoption. Notably, bylaw adoption will occur after the ministry has approved and reviewed the DCC update. And then following that bylaw adoption, those applications need to have a building permit issued, or the subdivision needs to be granted within 1 year of that DCC bylaw adoption. To reiterate, to qualify for those previous DCC rates, so in this case, the 2012 DCC rates, these applications must be in prior to adoption of the new DCC bylaw and should be complete. And the building permits and subdivision must be granted with 1 year of that bylaw adoption. Or the rezoning and development permit applications must result in building permit issues within 1 year of that bylaw adoption. We will now review the proposed DCC rates in Golden with the other municipalities in the region. Before jumping into this, I do want to note that many of these comparators are either undergoing a DCC rate update or will be undertaking a DCC update shortly. The numbers represent what information is available at the time of this presentation, and some of the comparators rates may change as they are not yet adopted by council. Those communities have been highlighted with an asterisk in the comparison slides. So first up here is the comparison of that single detached dwelling rate. As you can see, Golden is in the top 4 there compared to their existing that is highlighted at the bottom here. I do want to note that Revelstoke's recent DCC update, they have chosen to charge on a floor area basis for residential. This is an alternative approach that is representative of their current development context. So underneath Revelstoke, we have an assumed 350 square meter size there, just for the purposes of comparison. As we're working through the comparisons, I do want to highlight that the purpose of DCCs are to fund the needs of the community and represent the needs of the community and those particular contexts as well. So that you will see different proportions of the different programs here. So roads is in gray, drainage is yellow, sewer is pink, water is blue, and then the parks is in green. And we also have police facilities, fire facilities, and regional DCC rates highlighted here. As you can see, there are different needs in different communities, with larger requirements for water in Revelstoke as compared to Golden. So these are not necessarily an apples to apples comparison. It's important to consider that those contexts are very representative of that community's growth and the community's infrastructure needs. Jumping to the townhouse comparison, so that is the medium density charge rate here. So Golden's up at 31,000 there, a jump from the current existing 2012. And again, the other communities that are currently undergoing updates or have updates anticipated include Cranbrook, Invermere, Radium Hot Springs, and Salmon Arm accordingly. Here is the comparison for the apartment, again on a per dwelling unit. This is the comparison of the commercial rates for the other comparators in the region. Notably, we did not compare commercial accommodation as there are different approaches in the various communities here. So we went with the most general comparison here, which is the general commercial. This is the industrial rate, Golden proposed as compared to the other regions. And then finally, the comparison of Golden's institutional rate to the others in the region. Notably, Golden does not currently have a institutional rate, so it doesn't, the 2012 is not reflected here. And some other communities also do not have institutional rates incorporated. So now we'll jump to the next steps and then we'll open up for questions. So we ask that if our further questions are come up or not addressed here during this presentation, that they are submitted by end of day Wednesday, January 20th. And then we are requesting feedback until Monday, February 6th, 2026. Any feedback or questions can be submitted to dcc@golden.ca. The What We Heard report will be brought to council in March or early April. And then we are targeting DCC bylaw adoption in summer 2026. DCCs do require ministry approval, so the timing will be dependent on that review at the ministry once the DCCs are submitted. And now I think I will open up the floor to questions and we can jump to various slides as well.
And again, if you have any question, please put your question in the chat so we can track the question and make sure that we can answer. And again, we can try to answer all the questions. And if we are running out of time, we can take the question and provide an answer in the town website with the recording.
I see Chris King, you have your hand up.
Yes, hi team. Understanding that density is more favorable for residential development within the town of Golden, is there a reason why you went from a per dwelling unit instead of a per square meter cost charge for residential?
So on the administrative side, on a per dwelling unit and per square meter basis, administratively, it is easier to calculate for the DCC rates themselves, and I'll just jump to the rates here. In the case of Revelstoke doing this per square meter basis, that was typically informed by the type of development they're seeing with a larger square footage and meters being developed in Revelstoke itself. It is a strategic choice and it is informed by both administrative choices as well as the type of development that the community is seeing itself.
I'll put a little bit of context to this, is that we're proposing a 143 dwelling unit apartment complex, and that will put my DCCs at $4 million. And that would be, you know, was it 10% of the whole entire DCC contribution or requirements? So with a lower square footage or a square meter cost charge, that encourages developers to have more efficient apartment buildings or towns and whatnot. So I'll leave that to council.
We appreciate the input and feedback. There are communities that do choose, especially in those higher densities, to charge on a square meter basis. So
And then same with commercial accommodations, we're at $17,000, 806. So we're proposing a 180 room hotel, and that's $3 million or $3 million plus $1 million in DCCs. Yeah.
Mhm. And we'd appreciate any submission that you also have in writing if you wanted to also submit that, because we will deliver all this feedback back to council in that What We Heard report.
Definitely. Thank you.
Mhm.
And I see a question here in the chat regarding the asset renewal, and the questioner is asking, asset renewal does not qualify for DCC money. Well, just double check.
I just started it again, so we should be good.
Okay. Awesome. I think in the chat there was the question regarding the asset renewal, that like DCC doesn't cover asset renewal, and so what happened for infrastructure, they are proposed under the DCC, but also our existing infrastructure. There you go. That's correct. Like the DCC does not cover asset renewal, and that's one item that the ministry usually is focusing on their review when the bylaw is going for review and approval at ministerial level. In that case, how the ministry look at it and how it was calculated is basically in the benefit factor. So let's just say there is an existing infrastructure that need to be upgraded and upsized in this case to allow for additional capacity. The benefit factor get allocated in that case, and it will be less than 100%, and how the ministry look at it on the calculation of the benefit factor is based on the asset condition and assessment. For example, if it's an existing asset that was installed like 2 or 3 years ago, in that case, like the ministry has provided example that even if it's an existing asset, that can be claimed 100% as a benefit for growth, because the asset probably will not have been replaced within the 25 years of the DCC calculation timeline. If it was an existing asset, there was due to replacement because of poor condition. In that case, the benefit factor slide more like either like on a 50-50 kind of percent between split between growth and renewal of the existing infrastructure. And in between, and anything in between, I will say it really depends on the condition of the existing infrastructure and how that is reported, usually in the condition assessment report of the municipality. I think there was another, I'm not sure, is a question here, the allocation of frontage fees, is that going to be used for the municipality contribution? I'm assuming this is related to the frontage fees as a taxation?
Yeah, that's right. So as we head into the new year and the frontage fees are going to be gathered by the town, are you looking to reallocate those frontage fees towards your municipality contribution, or is that going to be used in kind for additional projects that are needed throughout the community?
So typically frontage fees are usually established to allocate those funding for those frontage improvements that would not necessarily be included in a DCC program itself.
Typically, a lot of these are though, right? With between your sidewalks, water, sewer, like it's capturing. You know, there is overlap between the two, which is kind of what the
Yes.
majority of the needs for the community are. So my question is like, is 100% of those frontage fees going to go towards this, or is that going to be, hey, we're going to do our 1% or whatever that contribution ends up being out of those funds? Or is it going to be going towards, hey, the broader spectrum of, hey, we collected this from DCCs, the DCCs go directly toward this?
Bill, would you have any insight onto that allocation of frontage fees there from the town side?
Currently the frontage fees go just into general taxation. It's the frontage tax is something that the town will be looking at in the next couple of years, but generally for water sewer, those would be coming out of the sewer reserves and taxation. So the sewer reserves are primarily funded by water sewer fees. And I'll just offer kind of on that topic that there's a few projects I believe on the sewer side that have a larger taxpayer allocation to them.
Is the town willing to phase this in? Like, it seems excessive going from, and I heard council say this, when it comes to the taxpayers, you guys are willing to phase in, increasing taxes over a certain period of time. Is there any amenability from the town to say, okay, this is where we're going to be in the next 3 to 5 years, as opposed to, hey, we're adopting this in 1 year, unless you have in-stream protected, you're paying $30,000. Like, we are your taxpayers too at the end of the day. And it seems that a lot of consideration is given to municipal residents and consideration for their pocketbook, but that same kind of approach isn't being taken with us.
I think it is a comment that we will include in what we are the report. It will be up to the town administration and council to consider like the either phasing or the distribution of the fees or taxation, how that is used for it.
Yeah, and just to add to that comment, I know that the general consensus is that as developers, we're going to be passing these fees along to our purchasers at the end of the day. But, Chris can tell you this, Rav can tell you this, everybody else in this room that's a developer, Mike, it's pretty hard to get $35,000 extra given the cost of building in Golden. So it's not necessarily a cost that you're passing on to your end purchaser. It's going to be coming out of our pockets in the interim. And, with the affordability study and everything that's been pushed by the town, I think it's quite difficult. I think it's quite difficult for the town to expect us to swallow this. If I'm doing 50 units, there's $1.5 million on top of my booster station upgrade I have to do, on top of, all the other stuff that's going on in town. And I have to contribute to, water and sewer issues all over the place. So I just think taking the same approach that you take with municipal residents with developers would be appreciated.
And we'll put that note into the What We Heard report as well. And we definitely encourage everyone here, if you would like to submit more comments to the DCC at golden.ca email, that will also be included into the What We Heard report. And we will provide that also to council so that they can make those decisions and make those considerations as well.
I see a question here from Rav. The question is, what is the value of the project in pipeline? They are exempt of these fees. And not sure if Rav, maybe you want to expand on this question and specifically maybe what you are referring to project in pipeline.
Yeah, and maybe I worded it wrong. Chris had an example. I know his group has a number of large projects in the pipeline. I think, and then Chris was doing a calculation of what the DC fees would be for that development if they weren't exempt. It'd be important to understand for the group what projects. I understand there's a huge contingent of developers in the room or in part of the conversation who've had projects in the pipeline for a number of years and have had applications in with the city. So, one of the things Chris mentioned in his comment, he's doing a calculation on how much percentage of their project, their DCCs are contributing to. I'm just rounding numbers off to that $30 million. I think there's a gap here as a resident and, as a developer. I think it's important for us to know and understand, if there's a $30 million, I'm just using round numbers, if there's a $30 million of DCCs we're trying to recuperate from developments to upgrade the infrastructure that we require for the growth, how many projects are currently in the pipeline that are going to be exempt, that are not going to be contributing to this $30 million pie? Because from what I understand, there's quite a significant amount of applications in pipeline, and that's going to leave, I think it's going to do two things. There's a remaining number of developments who have not yet submitted, who are going to be bearing potentially the brunt, or there's going to be a shortfall of DCC revenue that comes in. And then another thing separately, I think there needs to be significantly more conversation and discussion around these numbers. I mean, when you put on, to course at $1.5 million on a 50 unit project, I have a hard time seeing how any project's financially feasible moving forward. But I think Gore had a good suggestion. If there's some sort of phasing in over, I don't think 3 to 5 years is I think that's too fast. I think it needs to be a longer cycle. Otherwise, I think we could stagnate the market. I think it'll be completely shut down I think it'll shut down all development. Projects will just not become feasible if it's stagnated. And I disagree with Gore. I think all of the costs are going to be borne by the consumer. We're going to have to tack on the $30,000 per in DCCs to each resident apartment unit. That's going to increase that fee. I think if we can roll that in, and we're going to forever be selling units for more and more money. Construction costs are only going to go up. If we're phasing that as $5,000 units are coming on this year, they're $5,000, $10,000 more than they were last year. And over 5 or 6 or 8 years, we're rolling that 30,000. I think it could be something the market could absorb. But sorry, I kind of went on a rant and ramble there. So I think I brought some clarification to my question on the DCCs there. And I don't know if anybody here is going to be able to answer that question.
We do appreciate the insight onto the market there as well. As we have not done the calculation of the existing projects within the pipeline that would be subject to that in-stream protection as of yet, but we appreciate that insight in that statistic looking towards that, because as you have said, it could end up shortchanging what we're doing. This DCC, for funding, the DCC is anticipated to reflect 25 years of growth on that horizon. So it is anticipated to marginally contribute that as time progresses there. Notably also, if we do pursue just factually the phasing in as well, that will also contribute to, as you have noted, a delay in funding as well. But that there's a lot of give and take here, and we do appreciate the insight and perspective you're offering, then that we can report back to council for consideration as well. Phil, was there anything you wanted to add there?
You're muted.
Thanks, Sarah. We've gone through a few of the applications that are in stream and deemed them complete, and we'll continue to do so. The town's been talking about this DCC update since, the fall of 2024, and with the development community. So there has been, some notice that these rates were going up significantly, including at the February development meeting that we had, and through various updates to the development community. But yeah, I hear you. There are very large increases that are out for consultation right now. Before we got bumped out of the call, I think there was a question from Matt in the chat as well. He asked if the proposed DCC rates had been reviewed against the Golden Housing Needs Assessment. And Matt, are you on the call still, or can you get back in?
And if not, right now we have the question recorded. And so the housing need assessment, yes, it was one of the technical documents. There was a review for the DCC rates in consideration for growth.
I think just some feedback from my own perspective. If the town could commit to shorter turnaround times for BPs and DPs and just responsiveness, it helps us decrease our carrying costs, which makes this more feasible. So, you know, with this DCC increase, I know you can't take money for this to say, hey, we want to increase the size of our planning department, but I think you have to give serious consideration to that, because the only way for us to decrease our overall costs of our projects meaningfully has to do with carrying cost and interest rates and what we're bearing. And if it's taking us years, or, you know, the water and sewer project was a couple of years coming up with it where everything's on hold, those carrying costs matter to us. So I think one key thing that I would like you to take to council is, if you expect to do this and you want to do it successfully, the turnaround times on comments and getting any permitting done needs to be a commitment where we'll get comments back maybe in 2 weeks on the long scale of things. You know, when it gets turned in, we have certain timeframes that we're going to be expecting to get it back. Because, you know, take for example, if you have a $30 million project and you're waiting a month or two or whatever it is, and your initial costs are $5 million, you know, sitting at 8% with the bank right now is a lot of money on a monthly basis that we're having to incur on top of these expected DCCs. And with that being said, Rob, just to your point, with the DCC and in-stream protection, I would just, I don't put too much thought into that, because I think what's going to happen is if everybody who has a project tries to rush to beat this, you're going to get it stuck in a situation where the market becomes so saturated that nobody's going to sell. So I think people are going to be guarded in that approach as well. So, you know, even if, you know, Chris comes out with 100 units, I'm 50 units, you have something else going on, I think the town just remain cognizant of that. Although there's people who are in stream for this, I don't necessarily think all of them are going to come to fruition.
And Rava, there was I think the last question regarding what is the future DCC anticipated recovery on a future project on vacant land, of which no application has been submitted yet. So it maybe just was the follow-up to your previous question regarding the in-stream application. I don't think that the town has done an analysis, but we can follow up on that regarding the application that Phil is referring in-stream or being approved, and to have a sense of how many of these application will be exempted of these fees, and the one that they will have to, this fee will apply for into it. And these are the questions I see in the chat. Are there any other questions for any participant in the Zoom?
I have a comment or question. So clarification, as developments are a little bit larger, there is other complications that come along with them. So for example, if the city gives us a development permit, however, there's still conditions on title that have to be worked through engineering or other professionals, but we still we'll solve those upon our building permit submission. Sometimes that takes a little longer to be able to solve, but then that window, if we submit our building permit under a provincial bylaw that states on the 357th day of the year, then we now have to amend to the new DCC bylaws. Is there flexibility between that window between the entitlement of development permit to building permit to be able to submit, so that we don't incur the new DCCs?
So Chris, I believe the one that we show on in the presentation for the in-stream protection are the provincial requirement and regulation for it, and definition for it.
Yeah, so we're in stream right now for development permit. Hopefully we'll get a development permit here soon. After a development permit, you say that it's expected to pass the new DCC bylaw by April, May, June. It might take me a year to finish my, our construction drawings and finish up maybe some conditions that are still on title that we need to be able to achieve before we submit our building permit. Now, is it hard and fast that on the 357th day of the year, or within that waiting period, that we now have to enjoy the new DCCs directly, or are we still considered in stream?
The legislation, Chris, speaks to the date that the building permit is issued. So you're looking at probably summer of 2027 for that date. Once the bylaws say adopted this summer, then you have 1 year to get the building permit. And that's a hard line unless there's a different phasing put in by council.
So now, if there is commentary back and forth between the city on the file to determine conditions on the file, like we have a special provision on ours, and some of others will have those too, that are developer contributed offsite front-ended agreements. Does that muddy the waters, or is it a gray area, or is there relaxation within that so we can continue on the work?
What you need is to have a building permit within 1 year of the adoption of the bylaw, and that's the minimum legislated requirement for in-stream protection.
Sorry, is it a building permit or development permit you need?
Building permit.
Building permit is it?
And with the BC government looking at possibly delaying your DCC payment on possession of the home, you guys, like that's going to be a municipal decision, right? The town can't adopt that as well, saying, hey, on possession, we'll take the contribution of the DCC.
The province is still ironing out those considerations.
But I'm saying, is that an autonomous decision from the province? Like, does the town have any say on that? So if the province says no, but the town says yes, for example.
I believe the way that it is, the introductory information that's being shared is that this would allow more flexibility on the development side to qualify for that, rather than an elected town decision. That is my understanding of the structure that we're working with for that deference of payment there.
Are there any other questions or comments the participant would like to record?
While folks are thinking about that, just back to the in-stream protection for a sec. It's we spoke of 1 year from the bylaw to get a building permit, or it's 1 year from the bylaw's adoption to have subdivision approval. So those are the two the two items. And then what gets you into the in-stream protection is having an application in stream, whether that's a rezoning application, a development permit application, a subdivision application, any of those.
And Rob, I see your comment here that developers should have some clarity and transparency on if a complete building permit is submitted prior to the deadline to be grandfathered into the old DCC, or what a reasonable cutoff should be. Yes, that's what is referring to in-stream protection, the definition of complete application. And so once the town deem an application, a receive application complete, that's where you have the, if you want to cut off, but at least a clarification if the application is under the in-stream protection or not.
Yeah, and just kind of touch, I think, on something Gore said, if there are people trying to get an application in, it's important. It should be fair and transparent. If it takes, it should take a reasonable amount of time to receive comments back and for that application to be processed. If you submitted a project today and it took 2 or 3 years to get building problems, it took a significant amount of time to receive building permit and communication back and forth. Beyond what's reasonable and expected, and you end up falling into the new DCCs. I think there should be some communication and discussion around that to ensure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, for sure. Like the expected timeline for like the review of the application that now is deemed complete and in stream. And again, also the understanding of what is that complete application. Because there is a difference too sometimes with the submission of a concept plan versus like a complete application with all the supporting technical documents. And Mike, I see, I guess there is a comment, I believe here, like I believe there is a significant level of ignorance to the fact that the 25-time proposal rate increase is not a guarantee collectible item. Many projects have not proceeded due to numerous factors, including town requests that put project outside of financial viability. If the town chooses to increase the DCC to 100,000 per lot, a zero is still a zero. So I believe it is more of a comment than a question.
Yeah, I guess it's a comment. I mean, obviously it's a personal comment, but I've been here long enough and listening to enough developments that don't move, and it's more than frustrating for sure, especially once things do get a little bit personal and you get your own dough punched in there, and you watch folks that have been doing it for generations of their family here. And I just think that there's a very high level of misunderstanding, at best, to be polite about it, within council chambers and the town hall, to the significant amount of costs. I mean, we've just seen probably 3 of the largest buildings get built, one that Rav knows really well in town, and then to be, we're talking 3 or 4 years later. I mean, from my own personal project, which has been kind of in the works, dealing with the town for 4.5 years, and have an initial feasibility study go from a 2.1 build to a 4.3, to then think, if I don't push ahead to go more and find another 900 grand, well, it doesn't take too much math. You can put 3 numbers together and divide it by 26 lots and know that that's a zero. You could charge whatever the heck you want, but the town and the engineers have killed the project, if debatably, before this happened. So that's my point, is you could make DCCs whatever you want, but if nothing's going to go because you've killed it, then it's a zero. So you're not going to collect any money for all the problems that exist, and there's going to be minimal growth, which, in my personal opinion, in 28 years here, it's been pretty minimal to this date. That I get it, you're chasing it and you're trying to fix it, but you can't, if the market's not going to bring people with the money to pay, then this particular solution is pretty heavy-handed, to go 25 times the current cost in a very short period of time. So I guess I'm just reiterating a bit what Gore and Rav were talking about, and Chris as well. I guess everyone that spoke is just, it's a very, very heavy hit, regardless of the time everybody's been working in the pipeline, or how they've been working with the town, how we've all pivoted. I know the town's line is always, well, this thing changed or that. Well, the longer things take, the more time you have that you have to change, you have to pivot, and things do change. But when you're trying to work in a cooperation, some form of a partnership with the town that you're trying to do business in, then that should be an expected part of the process. So I don't have a whole lot more to add. I mean, disheartening, terrible. I got lots of words, but I think I'll just leave it at that. I mean, ultimately, I think for a lot of folks on this call, not much has changed, only it's gotten worse. And that's kind of the direction you're headed. So I'm not sure what else I could add. And I think I'll just leave it at that. I'm working on keeping my language together today.
Thanks, Mike, for your comments. And I have a hand, Firston.
Yeah, wouldn't let me change my name. So I do have a comment for you guys. I think the town, like, I think part of the frustration that everybody has is like a submission is never complete. And I think the approach that would be appreciated by the development community of getting through the permitting process is like an 80-20 rule. You know, like we don't have to have everything ironed out and all the I's dotted and T's crossed. I think it's just like get it to 80% and we'll work through the final details through the building, like as we go from DP to BP. And I think that's what happens to a lot of us is that we get buried in these things and you come back, you need 10 different reports. You're getting, you know, geotechnical people on the phone. You get 10 different engineers on the phone. You're paying $6,000 to $10,000 an hour for these phone calls. And you just don't have any real traction anywhere. So just one comment and another thing to take away, just along with the time to process is just, it'd be nice if the town took the approach of, yay, get this to 80% and then we'll work through the final details to help development move along. And I don't think a lot of the general public realize how long those little details can take while you're working on all the other stuff as well. But that also shows the traction that banks want to see to start to finance this stuff. So just a comment that, you know, 80% of a project's kind of altogether get it to DP phase would go a long way for all of us as developers. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Garrett. For the process of the planning applications, we have a pretty simple checklist of what we're looking for a complete application per our bylaws. It's an application form, a site disclosure statement, architectural drawings for a development permit, and a stormwater management plan, a geotechnical submission, and that's to support the stormwater management plan. And those are really the main aspects for a DP. I might be forgetting a couple, but we have a pretty simple list, and then that's what we would refer out.
Not so much. Sorry, Phil, just to quickly jump in. Like, I mean, from my own experience, you guys adopted a step code 1 year ahead of it being brought in with the BC government, right? So those little things that you're, hey, you know, this is by the time you go to build, although we're planning around a time where a step code hasn't been adopted, those little things that are brought in, that all adds cost to it. You know, we plan according to what's currently there, and then we adopt this. It's like, hey, by the time Casper said, by the time you guys are ready to build, you should be building according to this spec. Like those little things do add up. And I get what you mean that there's small details, you know, it's the bare minimum in terms of it. But there is a lot of stuff that comes back from the town that's like, hey, we have to get into the nitty-gritty of it. Get the conceptual stuff in space, and if it's, hey, we have to work on this structural aspect of it, or you know, your fuss calculation, we need to work on this a little bit more. I think if you could get to the point where you can issue that DP and it's 80% there, and you have commitments from developers, it'll lessen the burden on you as well as us. Sorry for cutting you off.
Yeah, noted. Thanks.
Hey, Mel here from the chamber. I just want to just make a comment. We've been working with developers for the last 1.5 years, trying to find solutions. And what I've heard from most of the developers here is that they're willing to compromise. They're willing to find a solution. They're really smart and know what they're doing. And I feel like the town has been trying to do that, but seeing these numbers is just a real kick in the pants. Like, I'm incredibly upset for everybody who wants to do this and move forward and get developments moving. I'm worried about everybody trying to rush the planning and development office to try and get projects moving forward before this stuff happens. And I absolutely agree that it should be incrementally increased, not from the lowest rate to the highest rate. So just kind of wanted to say those things out loud before the meeting ends. Thanks.
Yes, thank you all for your comments. I will highlight that we have about 6 more minutes until we would get, in theory, kicked off of the Zoom call again. But we are still open for questions, and I believe this period has been scheduled for 2 p.m. too. So we are still open for questions and comments as we are here.
Yeah, Jen, I'll just add, we also have a survey that's been posted on our social media and at golden.ca/DCC. If folks want to fill out the survey, it's maybe there's 8 questions or so in the survey, pretty quick to fill out. Thank you.
Can you share the link in the chat, please, Phil, for
Yeah,
that?
you bet. No.
Thanks.
Rav, I see your hand up.
Yeah, just to kind of reiterate or something Melanie said, like developers, I speak for myself, but we can work with things. We understand that DCCs are required. We understand that, there's infrastructure needs here. I think that, we can work with a lot of things. The main thing that we need is certainty. We need certainty on timelines. We need certainty on costs. If I'm spending 1.5 million, if it's if I'm spending I need to know if I'm spending 1.5 million or 1 million on the DCCs, what are my costs? What are my frontage costs? Every project we've done, they've been very different. There's no certainty. You don't know exactly what you're going to pay until you're in the middle of a project, and that doesn't work. You need to know what your costs are going to be, and if it's and the rest of the things, development's hard. We got a lot of challenges. There's a lot of other things to be worried about. But not having certainty at the municipal level on timelines on when you're going to receive a development permit or building permit, on what that timeline looks to reiterate what Gore said, it greatly impacts our carrying costs. And so, albeit that the DCCs are significant, I don't want to minimize they're not significant. A lot of these projects, once you get into the bigger projects, they're $15-20 million projects. When your carrying costs will eat up, is a significant, if these get delayed an extra year, a lot of these costs are eaten up in the cost of construction rises by 10%. So on $20 million project, it takes an extra year before you get your building permit. You're spending $2 million more in construction costs, and you potentially pre-sold these units at a discounted rate. That's the number one thing that makes it hard to, move a project forward, is the uncertainty. So I think that's more than anything, more than any comments on DCCs, it's just a request for, some level of progress towards helping bring certainty and, making the developers feel more comfortable and confident that there is a process, and you can rely on the process. So I'll try to keep that to my last comment for the group here.
Appreciate the comments.
And sorry, I had one more quick comment as well, just building on what Rab was saying. On top of the DCCs that are being proposed here of $35,000, I think it's important that council realize a lot of us are being asked to pay for growth within the municipality as well, front-ending costs of, between $2 to $7 or $10 million. So I just think that should be taken into context. And again, when talking about, hey, we have all these immediate needs that are in front of us, and we're going to get the developers to pay for it, I do think it's important to take that into consideration, these front-ending fees and what we're having to pay, with hopes of recouping it. It'll never happen. I'll never recoup $1 on my projects because I'm the only one developing there. But I think it's important for you guys to realize that that's also why we would like to see this phased in, is that we're having to do these upgrades for the community where we're fronting this much money, and we're already going to have to pay interest on, between $2 and $7 million with the banks at 8%. And then we're going to have to pay these DCCs as well. So I think, all things considered, a phased approach would go a long way for all of us. And I'm good now. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any more hand raised or comments in the chat. So again, if anyone has maybe last round, any question or comment before we wrap up this webinar engagement presentation.
Thanks so much, guys.
I just have one quick question. Will there be any other public sort of consultations on this, or is this the one and done? Just curious.
I believe at this time there was just this one-time engagement with the stakeholders. And again, the presentation and the recording will be posted on the website. And there is the opportunity to provide either comments or to the email that was provided.
Thank you.